Okay, let's be honest. If you saw the title of the book we are covering today, sitting on a friend's coffee table, you might roll your eyes.
You definitely do a double take.
Yeah, a little bit. You might even laugh. Maybe, check if they're okay.
It definitely screams gimmick, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
We are looking at The Sex God Method by Dr. Kelly DuBois. And I know, the minute you hear that title, you're probably picturing some cheesy pickup artist manual from 2005.
Or maybe a guide on how to hold a plank position for 45 minutes.
Exactly. Or some kind of, bedroom gymnastics. But that reaction, that skepticism, that is actually the first trap.
It really is, because once you actually crack the cover, DuBois pulls a complete 180 on you.
She does. The very first thing she says is basically, if you are here for physical techniques, or what she calls the plumbing, put the book down. This isn't a manual about mechanics. It's a deep dive into the psychology of arousal, the nervous system, and the concept of presence.
That is the core conflict right out of the gate. And the central thesis here, it's fascinating because it argues that most men are failing in the bedroom, but not for the reasons they think.
Right.
It's not about size. It's not about stamina. It's not about having this library of complicated positions.
So what is it?
It's because they are treating sex as a performance. They are doing sex rather than connecting through it.
It's the difference between a technician and an artist.
That's a perfect way to put it. One is following a manual. The other is creating a feeling.
And the source material is structured almost like a slap in the face. It's meant to be a wake-up call, divided into acts.
Yeah, it moves from the unconscious mistakes men are making into the deep neurobiology of female arousal, and then finally into specific behavioral shifts.
So our mission for this deep dive is to really understand DuBois' argument for what she calls erotic authority.
Erotic authority. I like that term.
It sounds heavy, but also kind of grounded,
It is. And specifically, we need to understand how shifting from seeking validation to offering an invitation changes the entire dynamic of intimacy.
Okay, so let's jump right into that first big concept, the performance trap. The author uses this incredibly vivid, slightly hilarious, but also kind of tragic analogy.
Oh, I know the one you're talking about.
In chapter 3. She says most men touch women like they are opening a Tupperware lid.
That image really sticks with you, doesn't it? You can almost hear the plastic snap.
It's so visceral. But what does she actually mean by that?
Well, she's talking about touch that is completely mechanical, task-oriented. The author argues that men often approach intimacy like it's a checklist or a puzzle to be solved.
Like a video game quest.
Exactly. They are thinking, okay, touch here for 30 seconds, get a reaction, then move to station B. It feels so disconnected because the man isn't actually feeling the person. He's handling a body.
He's operating machinery. Looking for the buttons.
Precisely. And if you are looking for buttons, you aren't present with the person. And this links directly to what DuBois calls the human audition.
The human audition.
Yeah, and I found this part really relatable for a lot of people, even outside the bedroom. The idea is that men often turn sex into a test they are trying to pass.
Oh, absolutely. It's that internal pressure cooker.
It's the validation trap. The text explains that if a man is constantly checking in mentally asking, am I doing it right? Is this okay? Is she bored? Did that work? He is seeking approval.
He's looking for a grade at the end of the semester.
Exactly. He isn't leading the experience. He is asking to be graded on it.
Yeah.
And biologically, psychologically, the book argues that this just kills polarity.
How so?
Well, you can't lead someone if you are constantly looking to them to tell you where to go. It makes the partner feel like they have to manage your anxiety.
Which brings us to the source's very, very controversial take on the nice guy.
Yeah, we have to be careful here.
We do. Because usually we think of being a nice guy as a positive thing. We want people to be nice. But the text argues that in an erotic context, niceness is often just a mask.
And we really need to handle this with nuance. The author isn't saying be a jerk. Not at all. She isn't advocating for being rude or dismissive.
So what's the distinction?
She's distinguishing between kindness and niceness. And in this context, niceness is defined as performative agreeableness. It's being agreeable just to avoid rejection or conflict.
So it's a defense mechanism. It's not genuine virtue. It's just safety-seeking behavior.
That's the key. The text argues that women aren't turned on by men who bend to whatever they think the woman wants. They are turned on by men who claim the space.
It's about congruence.
Exactly. If you are angry or hungry or passionate, but you're acting all polite and stiff, your nervous system is lying, and your partner feels that disconnect.
That is a huge point. It's about that internal monologue. The book argues that a man's internal anxiety, thoughts like don't lose your erection or I hope she likes this, is actually louder than the physical sensation.
It acts like static interference.
Right. If he isn't in his body because he's worrying about being a nice guy or performing well, she won't be in her body either.
And the author posits that a woman's nervous system is incredibly sensitive to that absence.
Yeah.
If you are in your head, you are essentially absent from the room.
Wow.
She's alone in the bed with your anxiety, and anxiety is contagious.
So let's pivot to the other side of the equation. If men are stuck in this Tupperware performance mode, what is actually driving female arousal, according to this text?
Okay, yeah.
Because DuBois says it's not just friction. She introduces this concept of friction versus narrative.
This is a critical distinction for you to grasp. The source suggests that while men are often visually stimulated and friction-oriented...
Meaning the physical sensation is the primary driver?
Right. But for female arousal, it's heavily driven by narrative and tension.
So the story happening in her head is more important than what's happening to her body.
In many cases, yes. It's not just about the physical sensation. It's about the context, the build-up, and the psychological stakes. It's the why and the how much more than the what.
Which leads to this term I found really compelling, psychological penetration.
It sounds intense, right? Maybe even a little aggressive.
A little.
But the definition is very grounded. It's the idea that you have to enter her mind before you enter her body. The author calls the brain the biggest sex organ.
So it's about occupying mental real estate.
Exactly. Psychological penetration is about creating a headspace where she is focused entirely on you, where the outside world just disappears.
And a big part of that narrative is what the book calls the uncertainty principle.
Yes. And this was surprising to me because usually we think people want safety. We're taught safety is the foundation of intimacy. But the text says women crave uncertainty with safety.
That sounds like a paradox. How can you have both at the same time?
Well, think of a roller coaster. You get on it because it feels dangerous. You don't know exactly how the twists will feel, but you know the lap bar is locked. If it's all chaos, it's terrifying and trauma-inducing. But if everything is predictable...
It's a small world ride.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's boring. There's no dopamine spike. The sex god method argues for that middle ground, the mystery of not knowing what happens next, but feeling safe enough to surrender to it.
And that safety comes from the erotic authority we mentioned.
Right. And let's define confidence here, because the book gives a very specific definition. It isn't about being fearless. The author explicitly says confidence is not giving fear the wheel.
I like that.
It is about congruence, where your words, your body language, and your intent all align. You aren't hiding your desire, and you aren't apologizing for it.
Okay, so we need to get into the weeds of dominance now, because that word carries a massive amount of baggage.
It really does.
In pop culture, dominance usually means leather, whips, or, frankly, abusive behavior.
Okay.
But the text spends a lot of time redefining this.
It does, and it's vital to get this right. The book distinguishes between what it calls cartoon dominance, which is force, threats, or just acting like a bully, and true dominance, which is described as dominion or leadership.
The text even says that cartoon dominance is actually just insecurity in a loud hat.
That's a great way to put it. True dominance, in this context, is about creating safety. Connect this back to the nervous system. The author argues that for a woman to truly unlock or surrender sexually, her nervous system must feel safe.
Okay.
And if a man is hesitant, if he's asking for permission for every single move, he is forcing her to make the decisions.
He's putting the burden of leadership on her.
Exactly. He's forcing her to be the director. And if she has to direct the scene, she can't lose herself in the scene. She can't let go.
She has to stay in her executive brain function.
Which is the opposite of a flow state.
This brings up perhaps the most controversial piece of advice in the book. Stop asking for permission. Now, we need to be crystal clear here. The book is not advocating for non-consensual behavior.
Not at all. And this is where the nuance is so critical. It is advocating for attunement over a verbal checklist.
Attunement.
Yeah. The author suggests that stopping the action to ask, "Can I kiss you?" just kills the tension. It breaks the narrative.
It turns it back into a business meeting. You're filing a request form.
Right. Instead, the book suggests you create a vibe where the kiss is inevitable. You read the body language. Or you use what DuBois calls statements of intent.
What's an example of that?
Instead of asking, "Can I kiss you?" you might say something like, "Don't look at me like that unless you want to be kissed."
I see the difference. One is a request for approval. The other is a boundary and an invitation. It puts the ball in her court, but maintains that masculine frame of leadership.
Precisely. It allows her to step into the space you created rather than you waiting for her to build the space for you. It's confident, not coercive.
The analogy used here is the valet driver, which I thought was perfect.
Yes. The author compares a hesitant man to a valet just waiting for a green light. If you are just standing there waiting for her to make it easy for you, for a sign that says, proceed,
You're failing the test of leadership.
You are essentially asking her to take the risk of rejection. The text argues a man should be the one to risk rejection rather than putting the burden of initiation on the woman.
It's about owning the risk. That's a powerful shift. Okay, moving on to the mechanics of this method. We've talked psychology, now let's talk tactics. There was a whole section on rewiring the partner, which sounds a bit sci-fi.
It does, almost like brainwashing. The text uses the metaphor of the man becoming a drug.
Right.
It's intense imagery, but the psychology behind it is actually standard behaviorism. The concept is associative overload.
Okay, what does that mean?
The goal is to link the man's voice, his scent, his touch to her dopamine and oxytocin release.
So it's conditioning, basically. Pavlov's dog, but sexier.
It is classic conditioning, yeah. If you provide a massive spike in neurochemistry, the brain tags you as the source. You become the trigger for that feeling.
To keep that spike high, the author suggests the variable reward system. This is something we usually hear about with like social media algorithms or gambling.
That's exactly where the concept comes from. This is straight out of behavioral psychology. Think about a slot machine. If you press the button and get a pellet every single time,
You get bored.
you eventually get bored of the button. It becomes a chore. It's predictable.
Right, there's no thrill if you know the outcome.
But if the reward is variable, sometimes you get a pellet, sometimes a jackpot, sometimes nothing. You become obsessed with the button. The brain just lights up in anticipation.
So how does that translate to the bedroom? We aren't handing out pellets.
It translates to what the book calls erotic whiplash.
Erotic whiplash.
It means not being a one-note lover. It's alternating between tenderness and roughness, silence and dirty talk, fast and slow.
It's the unpredictability.
Yes. If she knows exactly what move comes next, the dopamine drops. Unpredictability creates anticipation, and anticipation is the fuel for dopamine. It keeps the narrative we talked about earlier engaging.
There's also this technique called anchoring. The text talks about marking the orgasm.
This is fascinating. The advice is to use specific phrases right at the moment of climax. Something like, you only come for me.
Wow, that's bold.
It is. But the logic is that you are psychologically linking that peak physical pleasure to you specifically. It's an attempt to wire the brain to associate that level of release exclusively with that partner.
Sounds a little manipulative looking at it coldly.
It does, but in the heat of the moment, the text argues it heightens the intensity of the bond and creates a massive feeling of belonging.
And speaking of release, the text talks about catharsis. The goal stated here isn't just pleasure. It's to make the partner cry.
I know, that sounds alarming out of context. Why would I want to make my partner cry?
Yeah, that was my first thought.
But she doesn't mean crying from pain or sadness. She means crying from relief. The text views crying during sex as a spiritual sign that emotional walls have just dissolved.
It's that moment where the nervous system stops fighting.
Exactly. It just dumps all the tension. The author argues that if you can take a woman there to that point of total vulnerability, where the only response is emotional overflow, you aren't just a sexual partner anymore.
You're a pivotal emotional experience.
It's touched the core.
Now, all of this sounds very technical anchoring, variable rewards, associative overload. It almost sounds like a science experiment. But then the book pivots again.
It does.
In chapter 15, to say that none of these techniques matter without the right mindset. The chapter titled Aura Over Aesthetics.
This is the hope chapter for a lot of guys, I think. The author claims looks and money don't matter nearly as much as aura. You can be the sex god without looking like a movie star.
So it's a state of being, not a set of genetics.
Exactly.
So what constitutes this aura?
The text breaks it down into 3 pillars: presence, command, and emotional resonance.
Okay, let's break those down.
Presence is penetrating with your attention, actually being there, not thinking about work or the steps. Command is deciding, not asking that leadership we talked about. And emotional resonance is making her feel seen.
You have those 3.
The text argues the physical packaging becomes secondary.
There's a specific mindset hack the author offers to achieve this presence. She calls it last night on Earth.
I loved this concept. It's about removing the goal. Most men have a goal. I need to make her orgasm so I feel like a man, or I need to finish. This goal orientation creates anxiety.
And the last night on Earth mindset shifts the focus to intensity.
Yes. Imagine if this were the last time you ever touched her, the very last time. How would you do it?
You wouldn't be rushing?
You wouldn't be rushing to the finish line. You wouldn't be checking your watch. You'd be savoring every single second. You'd be memorizing the texture of her skin. You would treat every touch as precious.
It changes the pace completely.
Yeah.
It forces you to slow down.
Yeah. And speaking of pace, the text gives some very specific tactical advice on this. Silence and eye contact.
Slowing down to the point of madness. That's the phrase used.
It's so powerful. Most men speed up when they get excited. It's a physiological response. Heart rate goes up, movement speeds up. The author says to do the opposite.
Resist that urge.
Completely. Slow down, hold eye contact, and breathe deeper than her.
Breathing deeper than her? That's interesting. Why?
It asserts dominion over the moment. It regulates your own nervous system, which keeps you from finishing too fast. But it also forces her to sync with your rhythm. It's a very powerful form of nonverbal leading.
You become the metronome for the experience.
You are saying, without words, I have this handled, we are on my time.
So if we zoom out, what does this all mean?
Yeah.
This book, The Sex God Method, is basically telling men to stop trying to be good in bed.
Exactly. It's saying that trying to be good in bed is a trap because it implies you are performing a service. It implies you are an employee.
You're the waiter hoping for a tip.
And no one fantasizes about the waiter.
No.
Exactly. The shift DuBois advocates for is toward radical self-possession. It's about removing the mask of niceness and providing a strong container for your partner's experience.
It's the shift from asking, did I do good, to saying, welcome to my world.
That's the perfect summary. It's moving from seeking validation, am I okay, to offering an invitation, come here. And that invitation is, I am here, I am solid, and it is safe for you to let go.
And that leads us to a final thought for you listening. The book talks a lot about psychological penetration, that the most profound intimacy happens before physical touch even occurs.
It's an idea that really stays with you.
So here's the question we want to leave you with. In your own interactions, and this doesn't even have to be just in the bedroom, this applies to dating, business, life, are you acting like a waiter, waiting for an order, hoping you get a good tip?
Or are you acting like a composer, leading the music? The difference is everything.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you in the next one.